Hello students, this is a long question and the question is describe the cavernous sinus. Okay, this is a dural venous sinus. Cavernous sinus is a dural venous sinus. So the question is describe the cavernous sinus under following heads: location of the sinus, extension of the sinus, how it is formed, then tributaries of sinus, that means the veins draining to this dural venous sinus. Then what are the draining channels, that means which will take out the blood from the sinus. Then communicating channels means the channels between the right and left cavernous sinus. What are the contents of the sinus, and ultimately relations of structure within the sinus, and lastly the applied anatomy. So it is a long question, but as you know that cavernous sinus is an important sinus, and usually asked in the examination. Let us come to the answer of this long question. Answer is the first point was the location. Let us come to the location where this cavernous sinus is situated. Now, these are paired dural venous sinuses. Paired means there is a sinus on right side and then sinus on the left side. So they are the paired dural venous sinus. What do you mean by dural venous sinus? That means they are within the dura mater, collection of the venous blood, within the dura mater. That's why they are called as dural venous sinus. And these sinuses on the right and left, they are located on either side of the body of the sphenoid bone. And the body of the sphenoid bone is on either side, present in the middle cranial fossa, in the midline, body of the sphenoid bone. Now, the sinus is located between meningeal and endosteal layer of the dura mater. That I will explain further. There are two layers of the dura mater. The outer is the endosteal, which forms the periosteum of the bone to which it is lining, and the inner layer of the dura mater is called as the meningeal layer. So the dura mater is made up of two layers. When they separate out, they enclose a space, and in this space lies the most of the dural venous sinuses. Most of the dural venous sinuses. The lumen of sinus contain network of communicating spaces. That means there is a sponge-like structure within the lumen of this cavernous sinus, and these spaces are intercommunicating with each other. Hence, the name is given as cavernous. So, small spaces are like the cave which are intercommunicating with each other. Now, the flow of blood is therefore very slow through this venous sinus, that is cavernous venous sinus, because the space is occupied by the cavities, small cave-like spaces through which the venous blood circulate. Hence, the speed of the flow of this venous blood through the cavernous sinus is quite slow. In this small diagram, if you want, you can zoom this diagram. This is the anterior clinoid process. And what is anterior clinoid process? It is at the lesser wing of the sphenoid. This is the free margin of lesser wing. This is the part of the anterior cranial fossa, and then this is the free margin of the lesser wing of the sphenoid on the right and the left side. And this is the margin of the greater wing of the sphenoid, which I have denoted by, represented by the dotted line, because it lies deep to this lesser wing of the sphenoid. And in between the greater and lesser margins of these sphenoid bones, there is a space, and this is called as this is known as the orbital fissure. This is the superior orbital fissure, because this communicate with the orbit or the cavity for the eyeball. Then you can see here it is the dorsum celli, and this is the posterior clinoid process. and this is that fossa that is called as the pituitary fossa, sella turcica, this sella, in which the pituitary gland will lie. And then here it is the apex of the petrous temporal bone, its anterior border, superior border, and posterior border of the petrous. So the cavernous sinus extend on either side of the body of the sphenoid. This area is the body. This is the lesser wing and this is the greater wing of the sphenoid coming out from the body where the pituitary fossa is located superiorly. So on either side of the body of the sphenoid, these in blue color represented are the site for the cavernous sinus. Okay, so now you have got the location of the cavernous sinus. Okay, so the sinus is located between the anterior clinoid process or its anterior end is close to the superior orbital fissure, and posterior end of this sinus is close to that of the apex of the petrous temporal bone within the middle cranial fossa, middle extension. Okay, now I come to the second point, extension. Okay, again see this extension, though I have covered it. What is the anterior extension of this cavernous sinus on right or the left side? Anteriorly, it is the medial end of the superior orbital fissure. Okay, and I told you that superior orbital fissure is between the free margin of the lesser wing of the sphenoid and to the margin of the greater wing of the sphenoid. This is the greater, and in between these two there is a slit-like space, and that is the superior orb. So the anterior end is going right up to the this superior orbital fissure. And which part of superior orbital fissure? The medial end of the superior orbital. This is the medial. So it is extending anteriorly up to the medial end of the superior orbital fissure. And posterior extent of this cavernous sinus is to the apex of the petrous temporal bone. Now, if you will see this, you will realize that this sinus is very small. It is about 2 centimeter in length anteroposteriorly and about 1 centimeter in width. Okay, can you see here? From here to here, it is anteroposterior extent 2 centimeter and its width is about the 1 centimeter. That means it is 1 centimeter wide. Let us come to how this cavernous sinus, which is formed by the splitting of the meningeal and dura mater, is formed through which the venous blood flows. Okay, so now we are on the third point, the formation of the cavernous sinus. Keep on noting this in your notebook, the formation of the cavernous sinus. The cavity of the sinus is formed due to the splitting of meningeal and endosteal layer of the dura mater. Now I will show you. Now suppose if we take a coronal section, right, passing of one of the sinus here, coronal section, and see this section, then we can realize how the meningeal, this dura mater will splits into two layer. Okay, and I will show you with the help of this coronal section. Okay, see this coronal section. I hope that there is no need to zoom. It is quite a large diagram. Now this is the body of the sphenoid, and in the body of the sphenoid there are right and left sphenoidal air sinus separated by a septum. Since this is a coronal section, you can see the right and left sphenoidal air sinus which are deep inside the body. Okay, now this is that pituitary fossa. Okay, and on the pituitary fossa, which lies between the right and left cavernous sinus here, this is the left cavernous sinus and this is the right cavernous sinus. In between this, on the pituitary fossa here, this place, okay, between right and left cavernous sinus, here is the presence of the pituitary gland. Okay, so this I have just very roughly shown you the pituitary gland, which at the infundibulum goes out through the opening into the fold of dura mater, what is called as the diaphragma sali. Okay, diaphragma. So this pituitary gland is present between covered by the diaphragma sali or the fold, diaphragmatic fold of the dura mater, forming the roof of this pituitary fossa. Okay, and will separate thus the right and left cavernous sinus. Okay, this is the, say for example, this is the right cavernous, this is the left. They are separated by this structure, that is the pituitary gland. Okay, so what I was talking to you was about the formation of this sinus. As the sinus is formed by the splitting of the dura mater. See this is the dura mater. And these two layers of the dura mater, one which is lining to the bone, okay? Here it is lining to the greater wing and then will come towards the body of the sphenoid. So this one which is firmly attached to the bone is called as the endosteal layer. And why it is called as the endosteal layer? Because it forms the periosteum of the bone. It is itself, because every bone has to be covered by the fibrous membrane which is called as periosteum. But the periosteum here is known as endosteum wherever it is lined by the dura mater, because there is another layer in the dura mater which is firmly fused. You cannot separate the meningeal and endosteal layer just by force pulling away from each other. It is not possible. They are firmly attached to each other. So the other layer which is more towards the cranial cavity side away from the bone, and that layer is called as the meningeal layer. You can see this green color going towards the this is the meninge. So there is an endosteal layer and meningeal layer. When this dura mater covering to the floor of the middle cranial fossa, the greater wing of the sphenoid, it comes towards the body of the sphenoid. It splits into two layers, endosteal layer and meningeal. Since the endosteal layer is always firmly attached with the bone, it will remain here. The meningeal layer will go away from the endosteal layer. And here you can see that both the layers, they are just going away from each other, and here they are enclosing a space by the side of the body of the sphenoid. This is body of the sphenoid. By the side of the body, this two layer, and within this space which is now here the blood, venous blood is pooled, okay, or flowing through this space, and this venous blood which is flowing this through space, okay, forms the dural venous sinus, which is here called as cavernous sinus. And I have already explained that why this venous sinus is called as cavernous sinus. The reason is that this cavernous sinus has the small septa trabeculi which encloses the cave-like spaces, intercommunicating sponge-like thing is here, so the blood has to flow through these, okay? That's why it is called as cavernous, because small caves are there which are intercommunicating. So this venous blood flow here through this cavernous sinus, okay? Now every sinus, every blood vessel, because what is sinus? It is a dilated space of the blood vessel, venous blood vessels, okay? Just similar to that capillary. Capillary have the regular narrow lumen about 10 millimicron in size. But here it is quite a wide pool of the blood. That's why it is called as sinus. But every blood vessel, may it be the sinus, may it be the endothelium, may it be the capillaries or the veins, venules or arteriole, everything has to line by the continuous lining of the endothelium. So in the dotted line where I have shown you, this is the endothelial lining of the cavernous sinus. See this? This is the, and within this endothelial lining, this is that cavernous sinus is enclosed. So what we were talking about its formation, and this is formation is due to the separation of the meningeal and the endosteal layer, okay? And then this meningeal layer will form the diaphragma oculi or a fold of the dura mater, forming the roof of the pituitary fossa in which the pituitary gland is lying. Then this meningeal layer will also form the covering to that of the pituitary gland here, and once again at the floor of this pituitary fossa, both the meningeal and endosteal layer will once again fuse with each other. But when it is forming the cavernous sinus of opposite side, again this two layer will split to enclose the cavernous space in it. Okay, I hope that you have followed the formation of the cavernous sinus by splitting of the meningeal and endosteal layer of the dura mater. So dura mater is made up of two layers, meningeal and endosteal. And whenever in the cranial cavity they separate from each other, they always enclose a sinus. That's why it is called as dural venous sinus. Now this sinus has a medial wall. You can see here, this sinus is having, because this is the midline, so it has a medial wall. This is the medial wall of a sinus, okay? And then it has a lateral wall, okay? This sinus has the lateral wall. This is the lateral wall of sinus. This is the medial wall of the sinus, okay? And then a narrow roof. This is a roof of the sinus is there, okay? Roof. And there is a floor, okay? This is the floor of the sinus. This is the floor, this is the roof, this is the medial wall, and this is the lateral wall of the sinus. The medial wall and the floor, that means this wall and this floor are lined by endosteal layer of dura. You can see this color. This is the endosteal layer. So this is the floor which is in the middle cranial fossa, and this is the medial wall which is the lining to the side of the body of the sphenoid. So they both medial wall and floor, they are formed by the endosteal layer which is firmly attached to the bone. Underlying bone is here. See, while the lateral wall and the roof here, they are formed by the which layer? This is formed by the meningeal layer. They are formed by the meningeal layer of the dura mater, okay? So you have seen how the floor, how the roof, how the medial and lateral wall of the cavernous sinus are formed, okay, are formed. Now, since it is a dural venous sinus and I said that it is containing the blood within the cavernous spaces, now then question comes from where the blood comes to this small cavernous sinus which is 2 centimeter in length and 1 centimeter wide, okay? From where it is getting its venous blood. Naturally, it will come through that of the venous veins, and these veins which will pour their blood, venous blood, into this sinus, they are called as tributaries of the cavernous sinus. Tributaries means one which is bringing the blood, venous blood, to the cavernous sinus, or just which is the inflow channels. They are the inflow channels bringing the blood to the cavernous sinus. So they are called as the tributaries. So we will see first what are the different veins or tributaries which are bringing the blood to that cavernous sinus. And naturally most of them, they will be located on the anterior end of the cavernous sinus, on the lateral wall, on the medial wall, on the superior or roof side, and from there the various tributaries will bring the blood to that of the cavernous sinus. While then we will learn how this venous blood which is brought by the tributaries, it will drain out of the cavernous. Naturally it will drain out from its posterior end, okay, posterior end. So let us first come to the tributaries. Tributaries of the sinuses. One is the central vein of retina. Okay, I will show you that central vein of retina. You can see here in the tributaries when we are learning. Okay, these are the two diagrams I have drawn to show you the tributaries. This diagram is showing the two cavernous sinus on either side of the body of the sphenoid, and just see the tributaries in one of the sinus here, okay? And this sinus is the left side sinus. This cavernous sinus is here, 2 centimeter long, 1 centimeter wide, okay? And then this is the anterior end of the sinus, this is the lateral or the lateral wall of the sinus, then this is the posterior end of the sinus, this is the medial end of the sinus, and this is, we are seeing from the top, that is, this is the top view of the cavernous sinus to show you the tributaries coming from different direction. And then this is a view of the cavernous sinus as seen from the lateral aspect, sitting in the middle cranial fossa. You can see that we are seeing this cavernous sinus from its lateral surface, and then we can see its anterior end, its posterior end, its superior end, and its which was not possible to see the superior and the inferior end in this view. So there are two views I have drawn. One is from the top views and another is from the lateral side, and both of this diagram will show us the tributaries, inward coming channels and outgoing channels, that is called as the drainage channel. Let us first come to the tributaries of the cavernous sinus. Now the tributaries of the cavernous sinus, as I said, the central vein of retina, this will come from anterior side. This is the central vein of the retina. Okay, so a very thin vein will come to drain on the anterior end of the, it will bring the blood from the retina. Okay, you must have heard about the central artery of the retina. Accompanying to this is the central vein of retina, which will pour its venous blood into the cavernous sinus. Then there will be the ophthalmic veins, this anterior side. These are the ophthalmic, superior and inferior ophthalmic veins, okay, which will bring the blood from the eyeball and the orbital cavity, superior and the inferior ophthalmic vein. And how they are coming to this cavernous sinus from the orbit or the eyeball cavity, okay, bringing the blood from, they are bringing the blood from through the superior orbital fissure. Through this, in this diagram I have shown you that superior orbital fissure is here. Okay, its anterior end is close to the medial end of the superior orbital fissure, and through this superior orbital fissure the ophthalmic vein, superior and inferior, will bring the blood to the cavernous sinus. Okay, let's go to that of the inferior cerebral veins. Okay, the blood will be brought by the cerebral veins, and cerebral veins here which are bringing the blood to the cavernous sinus, they are in the two sets, a superficial middle cerebral vein and inferior cerebral vein, from inferior surface of the cerebrum and from the middle portion of cerebrum along with the middle cerebral vein which goes in along with the middle cerebral artery. These veins, they will bring the blood to the top portion of the cavernous sinus or onto the lateral surface of the cavernous sinus. So these are the cerebral veins. That means blood from cerebrum is draining into, cerebrum means brain. Okay, it is draining into that of the cavernous sinus. Okay, it is draining into the cavernous sinus. So remember that from the eyeball, from the retina, from the brain, cerebrum, the blood is coming to the cavernous sinus, which is a very small, 2 centimeter wide, 1 centimeter in, width, and 2 centimeter long. Now the blood will also come from the middle meningeal vein, and you can see here the middle meningeal vein, which will come through the foramina. Okay, and this foramina, which is situated on the base, that is foramina spinosum, through which the artery will come. Now this will drain the blood into that of the middle meningeal artery. It is not in the foramina. Okay, this middle meningeal vein is lying in the floor of the middle cranial fossa, running on the superficial surface of the middle meningeal artery, and this will bring the blood from the lateral side and will drain into the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. So this vein accompanies the middle meningeal artery, about which I took video. I just made a video yesterday only on the middle meningeal artery. So this is that middle meningeal vein, which is called as middle meningeal sinus sometime, not always vein. Sometime it is also called as middle meningeal sinus because it is wider vein and it will drain its blood also. And from where this blood is coming? It is coming from the dura mater. This is the biggest source to drain the dura mater and the bones of the skull deploy to the area which it is supplying. So the middle meningeal artery is supplying. So the blood will come from the diploe or the bones of the skulls as well as from the dura mater. Okay, and it will drain into the cavernous sinus. Then there will be sphenoparietal sinus. sphenoparietal sinus, and that is sphenoparietal sinus, and this sphenoparietal sinus lies on the free margin of the lesser wing of the sphenoid here. Okay, so this is the lesser wing, this is the greater wing, superior orbital fissure, and this is from free margin. This sphenoparietal sinus will come and will drain onto the more anterior side, okay, because here is the location of the medial end of the superior orbital fissure, okay. So there is the sphenoparietal sinus also. So many veins and so many, structures from different areas have drained here, okay, drained to the cavernous sinus. Now let us see how the blood will go out. So it will percolate through the cavernous spaces and then will come towards the posterior end of the cavernous sinus, and how from the posterior end it will go out, and this will go out through the two sinuses. This is called as superior petrosal and the inferior petrosal, and they are located on the petrous temporal bone, in close relation to the petrous temporal bone. That's why it is called as the superior. Let us see, this is the petrous temporal bone, apex of the petrous temporal bone, and here from the posterior end of the cavernous sinus, you are not seeing. Okay, let us see from the posterior end of the cavernous sinus. This is the petrous temporal, its anterior border, its superior border, and its posterior border of petrous temporal bone. So on the superior border, this is the superior petrosal sinus is located. So this superior petrosal sinus will drain the posterior end of the cavernous sinus, and this sinus will go laterally where it will drain to a large sinus called as the transverse sinus, okay, which is in the posterior cranial fossa, will come to here, and then it will form a sigmoid sinus. Before it will form sigmoid sinus, this is the superior petrosal sinus will drain here. Then at the inferior border, okay, there is the presence of the inferior petrosal sinus, and this inferior petrosal sinus will also drain the blood, okay, through the jugular foramina. It will go, and then at the base of the skull it will join to that of the internal jugular vein. It will join to the internal jugular vein. I will show you these two sinuses posteriorly, how they are draining to this. Let us see in this diagram first, which are also in the lateral view also. This is the superior petrosal sinus on the superior border of the petrous temporal bone, which will drain here into the transverse sinus. And transverse sinus is coming from the... Thus we see that the blood from the posterior end of the cavernous sinus is ultimately draining the superior petrosal to the transverse sinus, and the inferior petrosal to that of the internal jugular vein. You can see the same thing here in the lateral view. Superior petrosal to the transverse sinus and inferior petrosal to the internal jugular vein, which is at the base. That means this inferior petrosal, that it goes from the anterior end of the jugular foramina, and at the base of the skull it opens into the internal jugular vein. So these were the drainage tributaries, okay. The blood was going out of the cavernous sinus, okay, and ultimately was draining into the internal jugular vein. Let us come to the next aspect of this. It is the communicating channel. Communicating channel means the channels, they are communicating between right and that of the left cavernous sinus, okay. And this communication between the cavernous sinus, right and left, is passing deep to the pituitary gland, that is through the pituitary fossa. From here to here, there are the communicating channels are located. Now these communicating channels between the right and left cavernous sinus are anterior, and I have not drawn here posterior. They are the anterior and posterior communicating channels which are going, which are just pulling the blood between the two cavernous, communicating the blood between two cavernous sinus. Then there is another set of the veins which starts from the under surface of the cavernous sinus, passing through the various foramina present into the base of the middle cranial fossa. Okay, and then these veins, they go and open into the emissary, they open into the pterygoid venous plexus, and these veins which are communicating the pterygoid venous plexus, which is in the infratemporal fossa, by the side of the pterygoid muscle, median and lateral pterygoid muscle, just superficial to the lateral pterygoid muscle. These veins, they drain their blood to cavernous sinus, or cavernous sinus may drain its blood. That means the flow is on both the side, okay? Because these veins, emissary vein, and emissary vein means the veins which connect the dural venous sinus inside the cranial cavity to that of the veins outside the cranial cavity. They are called as the emissary vein. They are wall-less, so the blood can flow in both the direction. Then there is a drainage, communication is between the superior ophthalmic vein and the superior ophthalmic vein, which is here. This is the superior ophthalmic vein. It communicates with the facial vein, which is on the face, angular vein, through the angular vein, and supraorbital and supratrochlear vein, which forms ultimately the superior ophthalmic vein. They communicate with the facial vein. And in one of the video, I have shown that through this facial vein, okay, and then to the superior ophthalmic vein, and from this facial vein to the pterygoid venous plexus, there is a communication with that of facial vein. So the dangerous area of face, that is the infection from the upper lip and the nose, it may go in the cavernous sinus, okay, it will go to the cavern. So these are the communicating channel. Let us come to the contents of the this cavernous sinus. Now there is nothing within the cavernous sinus except this blue color venous blood. Every structure which seems to be within the cavernous sinus is actually outside the cavernous sinus. So only the venous blood is there within the cavernous, because it is lined by the endothelial lining. Okay, sinus is lined. So all other structure near the medial wall, this is the internal carotid artery. Okay, this artery is called as the internal carotid artery. Okay, so this is the internal carotid artery, and this is the nerve just inferior, infralateral to it, and this is the abducent nerve, the sixth cranial nerve. Okay, this is the sixth cranial nerve is abducent. They are outside the cavernous sinus because they are lined by the endothelial lining. Similarly, near the lateral wall, the contents are there, the various structure. This is the cranial nerve, fourth, the third, then this is the, ophthalmic nerve, and this is the maxillary nerve, the ophthalmic nerve, and then the oculomotor and trochlear nerve, the trochlear and then oculomotor nerve. They are arranged here. So this will be the third cranial nerve, oculomotor. This is the fourth cranial nerve, the trochlear. This is the ophthalmic nerve, part of the maxillary, and this is the, part of the trigeminal, and this is the maxillary nerve. Okay. These two, ophthalmic and maxillary, now they are the branches from the trigeminal ganglion. Okay, so these are the structures which are present in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. Okay, lateral wall, and this is near the medial wall, that is the internal carotid artery, but they are not within the cavernous sinus. They are actually outside in the close to the medial and lateral wall respectively. Now after finding the cavernous sinus, the contents within the wall of the endosteal and the meningeal dura mater on the lateral and medial side of the cavernous sinus, let us come to the relations. Okay, if we see the relation of this structure, superiorly this cavernous sinus here, superior near the roof, the cavernous sinus here is in relation to that of the optic tract. Okay, and internal carotid artery, okay, which after piercing through this cavernous sinus will come to lie near the roof anteriorly. Okay, anteriorly, and this is also lying just deep to the anterior perforated substance of the brain. So these are the superior relation. If we see the inferior relation, it is the greater wing of the sphenoid is here inferiorly. So cavernous sinus actually on the floor is resting onto the greater wing of the sphenoid. Medially it is in relation to the above to the pituitary gland, and below it is to the sphenoidal air sinus. So this is above medially it is in relation to the pituitary gland, and below it is the sphenoidal air sinus, and laterally it is in relation to the temporal lobe of the cerebellum. Here lies the temporal lobe, because this is the middle cranial fossa. So the temporal lobe of the cerebrum, it is in relation. So these are the various relations of the cavernous sinus with the neighboring structure. Okay. Now lastly come to the applied anatomy of this cavernous sinus. The first applied anatomy is in relation to the thrombosis. Thrombosis means when the blood will get clotted within the cavernous sinus. This will be called as the thrombosis of the cavernous sinus. Okay. And this thrombosis occurs due to infection in the dangerous area of face, lip and the lower part of the nose. Okay, and infection or bacterial infection may come from there, and then it may lead to the clotting of the blood here. Okay, formation of a thrombus, blood clot, and the blockage of this, that means naturally the flow of the venous blood will be blocked, and there will be the collection of the venous blood in the area of tributaries from eyeball, from dura mater, from the cerebrum, okay, and those emissary vein from this pterygoid plexus, which are all draining to the there will be logging of the blood. That means blood will accumulate in those areas, and then the symptoms will be due to the blockage of sinus. There will be pain in the eye, okay, swelling in the eyelid, and the protrusion of eyeball, exophthalmos. That is the protrusion called as. Then the second applied importance will be in relation to that of the symptoms due to the pressure on nerves, and this may lead to the pressure on the nerves which are in the lateral wall, and abducent nerve which is near the medial wall. And this may, because the pressure of the nerve, there will be pain in the eyes and forehead, okay, because ophthalmic nerve is compressed, okay, and within the eyeball there will be the nerves of oculomotor nerve going into the eyeball, and these nerves are supplying to the muscles also, that is the abducent, the trochlear, and the oculomotor. So there will be paralysis of the extraocular muscle which moves the eyeball. There will be the paralysis of these muscles. Okay. So the mostly this occurs due to the large tumor pressing this nerve. If there is a cancer in the surrounding area, that may press to the cavernous sinus, and ultimately it will press to that of the these nerves, okay, and then there will be the pressure symptoms there, paralysis of the extraocular muscle. The last applied importance is the rupture of the internal carotid artery. If the rupture takes place within the cavernous sinus where the internal carotid artery is traveling, then the arterial blood will collect in this cavernous sinus because of the rupture of the very delicate endothelial lining. Okay, and since the arterial blood will collect into this large space, okay, then this will lead to the unilateral pulsating exophthalmos. Unilateral pulsating exophthalmos means the eyeball will protrude forward, it will bulging. Okay, that is called as exophthalmos. Okay, and the pulsation of this artery through this pool of the blood will be felt in the eyeball. So eyeball will also start pulsating, and that is called as the pulsating exophthalmos. Okay, so arterial pulsations are thus transmitted to the protruding eyeball, and when you see a patient with the protruding eyeball whose eyeball is also protruding with synchronously with the heartbeat, that means there is some rupture inside the internal carotid artery as it is passing through the cavernous sinus. This completes a long question on the cavernous sinus. Thank you very much for watching this video.